There is something deeply unsettling about the American suburb at night. The perfectly manicured lawns stretching into darkness. The identical houses standing like silent sentinels. The porch lights flickering against the void. We tell ourselves these places are safe. We tell ourselves the HOA fees and the security cameras and the friendly waves from passing joggers mean something. We tell ourselves that evil cannot find us here between the cul-de-sacs and the community pools. We are wrong. Sarah Morrison learned this truth the hard way, and by the time she understood what was happening in Whispering Pines Estates, it was already far too late. The August heat was suffocating when Sarah pulled her aging Honda Civic into the driveway of 247 Sycamore Lane. The moving truck had arrived hours earlier, and cardboard boxes were stacked throughout the modest three-bedroom house like a maze of unfulfilled promises. Her daughter Lily sat in the passenger seat, headphones clamped over her ears, deliberately ignoring her mother and the new life Sarah was forcing upon her. Lily was 12 years old, that precarious age when children begin to realize their parents are fallible creatures capable of making terrible decisions. And moving from their comfortable apartment in Chicago to this sun-scorched suburb outside Phoenix, Arizona certainly qualified as a terrible decision in Lily's estimation. She did not understand that Sarah had no choice. She did not understand that the divorce had left them with nothing. She did not understand that this house, this impossibly affordable house in this impossibly perfect neighborhood, was the only thing standing between them and complete financial ruin. The realtor had been almost too eager to close the deal. Sarah remembered the woman's smile, too wide and too bright, as she handed over the keys. The previous owners had left suddenly, the realtor explained. Family emergency. They needed to sell quickly. Sarah had been so grateful for the low price that she never thought to ask why no one else had made an offer. She never thought to ask why a house this beautiful in a neighborhood this pristine had sat on the market for nearly 2 years. The first week passed in a blur of unpacking and furniture assembly and arguments with Lily about the unfairness of starting 7th grade in a new state where she knew absolutely no one. The neighbors seemed pleasant enough in that distant, suburban way. They waved from their driveways. They commented on the weather. Harold Mitchens from across the street even brought over a plate of cookies, though Sarah noticed his wife Linda watching from their living room window with an expression that seemed almost fearful. It was Linda who first mentioned the app. She appeared at Sarah's door on a Tuesday morning, her silver hair perfectly styled, her cardigan buttoned despite the 100-degree heat. There was something brittle about her smile, something that did not quite reach her eyes. Everyone in Whispering Pines uses Nextdoor, Linda explained. It is how we stay connected. How we keep the neighborhood safe. You should download it immediately. Sarah thanked her and closed the door, thinking nothing of the encounter. That evening, while Lily sulked in her room and the ceiling fan pushed hot air around the living room, Sarah downloaded the Nextdoor app to her phone. The interface was simple enough. Clean lines and friendly fonts and profile pictures of smiling neighbors. There was Harold Mitchens with his kind eyes and his plate of cookies. There was Linda beside him, that same brittle smile frozen in pixels. There was Tom Jeffries from the corner house, proudly displaying his riding lawnmower. There was the young couple next door, the Hendersons, holding their newborn baby. Sarah scrolled through the profiles idly, learning names and faces, trying to feel less like a stranger in this strange place. And that is when she noticed something peculiar. Beneath Harold Mitchens' profile picture, in small grey text that seemed almost translucent, there was a number. 6 days. Sarah blinked. She rubbed her eyes. She looked again. The number remained. She checked the other profiles, but none of them displayed anything similar. Perhaps it was a glitch. Perhaps her eyes were tired from staring at screens all day. She closed the app and went to bed, dismissing the oddity entirely. 6 days later, Harold Mitchens was dead. The ambulance arrived at 3 a.m, its red and blue lights painting the neighborhood in alternating shades of emergency. Sarah stood on her porch in her bathrobe, watching the paramedics wheel a covered stretcher from the Mitchens' house. Heart attack, someone whispered. Happened in his sleep. Never even woke up. Linda Mitchens stood in her doorway, and Sarah expected to see grief on the woman's face. Expected to see tears and shock and the raw devastation of sudden loss. But Linda's expression held something else entirely. Something that looked almost like relief. Something that looked almost like she had been expecting this moment for exactly 6 days. The funeral was held that Saturday at a small church on the edge of town. Sarah attended because it seemed like the neighborly thing to do, and she found herself standing among strangers who murmured condolences without conviction. She noticed that no one seemed particularly surprised by Harold's death. She noticed that several neighbors kept checking their phones throughout the service, their faces illuminated by pale screen light, their expressions unreadable. That night, Sarah opened the Nextdoor app for the first time since Harold's death. Her heart was beating faster than it should have been. Her hands were trembling slightly as she scrolled through the profiles. And there it was. Beneath Tom Jeffries' smiling face, in that same translucent grey text, a new number had appeared. 11 days. Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This was impossible. This was insane. This was some kind of sick coincidence that her grief-addled mind was manufacturing from random data. She navigated to Linda Mitchen's profile, half expecting to see a number there as well. But Linda's profile was clean. No timestamp. No countdown. Just a photograph of a woman who had recently become a widow. The following 11 days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah tried to convince herself that she was imagining things. She tried to focus on helping Lily adjust to her new school. She tried to unpack the remaining boxes and hang pictures on the walls and transform this house into something that felt like home. But every night, she found herself opening the Nextdoor app. Every night, she watched Tom Jeffries' countdown decrease by 1. 11 became 10. 10 became 9. 9 became 8. Sarah began to observe Tom more closely. She found excuses to walk past his house. She noted his daily routines with the obsessive attention of a woman losing her grip on reality. Tom Jeffries was 63 years old and seemingly healthy. He mowed his lawn every Thursday. He washed his classic Mustang every Sunday. He waved to passing cars and complained about the Arizona Cardinals and showed absolutely no indication that he was a man with less than 2 weeks to live. On the 8th day, Sarah finally worked up the courage to approach him. She invented a story about needing to borrow a wrench, and Tom welcomed her into his garage with the easy hospitality of a man who had never encountered true darkness. His garage was immaculate. Tools hung on pegboards in perfect rows. The Mustang gleamed beneath fluorescent lights. Tom handed her a wrench she did not need and launched into a story about rebuilding the car's engine, and Sarah found herself unable to focus on his words because all she could think about was the number she had seen beneath his photograph. 3 days. He had 3 days left. She wanted to warn him. The words pressed against her lips like prisoners begging for release. But what could she possibly say? The app on my phone predicts death dates. I know you are going to die on Thursday. She would sound insane. She would be insane. No reasonable person could believe what she was seeing. Sarah left Tom's garage without saying anything meaningful. She returned to her house and sat in the darkness of her living room and waited for Thursday to arrive. Tom Jeffries died on Thursday morning. The official report called it a freak accident. Tom had been working beneath his beloved Mustang when the jack failed. The car came down on his chest and killed him instantly. His neighbor found him hours later, still pinned beneath the vehicle, his eyes staring at nothing. Sarah did not attend this funeral. She could not bring herself to stand among those murmuring strangers again, knowing what she knew, seeing what she had seen. Instead, she locked herself in her bedroom and opened the Nextdoor app with trembling fingers. New numbers had appeared. Maria Santos from 3 houses down showed 14 days. The Henderson baby showed 22 days. Old Mrs. Patterson, who walked her ancient poodle past Sarah's house every morning, showed 9 days. Sarah threw her phone across the room. It struck the wall and clattered to the floor, the screen cracking but not shattering. She sat on her bed and hyperventilated and tried desperately to convince herself that she was experiencing some kind of psychotic break. Maybe the stress of the divorce had finally caught up with her. Maybe the isolation of this new place had unmoored her from reality. Maybe she needed to see a doctor, a therapist, anyone who could explain why she was seeing death dates that kept coming true. But deep in her heart, in that primitive place where instinct lives, Sarah knew she was not crazy. She knew the numbers were real. And she knew that something was very, very wrong with Whispering Pines Estates. The research began that same night. Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and a pot of coffee that she barely touched. She searched for the history of her neighborhood, expecting to find nothing more than old property records and zoning documents. What she found instead made her blood run cold. Whispering Pines Estates had been built in 1987 on the former site of the Maricopa State Hospital for the Mentally Disturbed. The hospital had operated from 1923 to 1971, and during those 48 years, nearly 3,000 patients had died within its walls. The official records blamed influenza outbreaks, tuberculosis, heart failure. Natural causes. Always natural causes. But Sarah found other records as well. Newspaper clippings from the 1960s detailing accusations of abuse and neglect. Patient testimonies describing experimental treatments and unexplained disappearances. A lawsuit filed by family members who claimed their loved ones had been used as test subjects for pharmaceutical companies. The lawsuit was dismissed. The hospital was quietly closed. The buildings were demolished. And somewhere in the chaos of destruction and development, the graves were lost. Sarah discovered a photograph from 1970 showing rows upon rows of simple wooden markers in a field behind the main hospital building. The markers bore no names, only numbers. Patient 1247. Patient 1248. Patient 1249. Hundreds of them stretching toward the horizon like a crop of forgotten humanity. That field was now Sycamore Lane. Sarah's house stood on the unmarked graves of the mad and the forgotten. The revelation should have prompted her to pack up immediately, to grab Lily and drive away from this cursed place and never look back. But something held her in place. A morbid curiosity. A desperate need to understand. And perhaps, though she would never admit it, a creeping suspicion that leaving would not save her. That whatever had taken root in Whispering Pines would not let her go so easily. The Nextdoor app confirmed her fears the following morning. Sarah opened the app to check on Mrs. Patterson's countdown and discovered a new notification waiting for her. A private message from an account that had no profile picture, no name, no identifying information whatsoever. Just a grey silhouette and a message composed of 3 simple sentences. You are not supposed to see. The numbers are not for you. Now you are part of the count. Sarah's hands shook so violently that she nearly dropped her phone. She navigated frantically to her own profile, searching for the grey text that she now understood to be a death sentence. Her profile was clean. No timestamp. No countdown. She exhaled a shuddering breath of relief and allowed herself a moment of hope. Then she checked Lily's profile. The numbers appeared beneath her daughter's 7th grade school photograph, beneath that gap-toothed smile that Sarah loved more than anything in this world. 14 days. The scream that tore from Sarah's throat brought Lily running from her bedroom. The girl found her mother collapsed on the kitchen floor, clutching her phone like a lifeline, sobbing so hard that she could barely breathe. Sarah could not explain, could not find the words to tell her daughter that something in this neighborhood, something in this app, something beneath the very ground they walked upon had marked her for death. 14 days. She had 14 days to save her daughter's life. Sarah tried everything. She attempted to delete the Nextdoor app, but it would not uninstall. She tried to factory reset her phone, but the app reappeared the moment she logged back in. She bought a new phone entirely, created a new account with a new email address, and the app was already installed when she powered it on for the first time. Lily's countdown remained at 14 days regardless of what device Sarah used. She went to the police. Deputy Martinez listened to her story with the patient condescension of a man humoring a hysterical woman. He explained that apps could not predict death. He suggested that perhaps the stress of her recent divorce was affecting her perception. He gave her a card for a mental health crisis line and sent her on her way. She went to the church where Harold's funeral had been held. The pastor, a young man with earnest eyes, listened more sympathetically but ultimately offered the same hollow comfort. He would pray for her family. He would keep them in his thoughts. But he could not help her fight something he did not believe existed. She tried to contact the developer of the Nextdoor app, but every email bounced back. Every phone number led to disconnected lines. The company's headquarters, when she searched for the address, turned out to be an empty lot in San Francisco where nothing had ever been built. 13 days remained on Lily's countdown. Sarah began to notice things about her neighbors that she had missed before. The way they glanced at their phones with expressions of resigned acceptance. The way they never discussed the deaths that seemed to occur with troubling regularity. The way they looked at Sarah with something like pity whenever they saw her walking down the street. Linda Mitchens finally told her the truth on the 10th day. Sarah found the woman sitting on her porch at midnight, staring at the stars with empty eyes. Linda did not seem surprised when Sarah appeared. She simply gestured to the empty chair beside her and began to speak. "We all see the numbers," Linda said. "Everyone in Whispering Pines. The app showed us the day we moved in, and we have been watching the countdowns ever since." Harold knew he had 6 days left. He spent those days making peace with his life, with his regrets, with me. He was ready when his time came. Sarah demanded to know why no one had warned her. Why they had allowed her to move into this neighborhood without telling her what awaited her family. Linda's laugh was bitter and broken. "Because the moment you arrived, the numbers changed," Linda said. "Harold had 3 months left until you pulled into your driveway. Then suddenly he had 6 days. The baby Henderson next door went from years to weeks. The neighborhood sacrifices new arrivals to extend its own time. We needed you here, Sarah. We needed fresh souls to feed whatever lives beneath this ground." The confession should have made Sarah angry. Should have filled her with righteous fury at the betrayal of these smiling, waving neighbors who had welcomed her to their community while knowing she was nothing more than a sacrifice. But Sarah felt only cold determination. These people had marked her daughter for death. These people would pay. 9 days remained on Lily's countdown. Sarah returned to her research with renewed focus. She scoured historical archives and old newspaper databases and obscure academic papers about the Maricopa State Hospital. She learned about Dr. Herman Voss, the hospital's director from 1955 to 1971. She learned about his interest in consciousness and death and the boundaries between the living and the dead. She learned about his experiments. Dr. Voss had believed that death was not an ending but a transition. He had believed that with the right circumstances, the right rituals, the right sacrifices, the boundary could be made permeable. He had used his patients as test subjects, pushing them toward death and pulling them back, measuring the changes in their consciousness each time. Most died permanently. Some survived but were never the same. And a few, according to his private journals which Sarah found digitized in a university archive, became something else entirely. The hospital had been built on land that the local Native American tribes had considered cursed. A place where the barrier between worlds was thin. Dr. Voss had chosen the location deliberately. He had used the existing spiritual infrastructure to amplify his experiments. And when he finally succeeded in his goal, when he finally bridged the gap between life and death, something had crossed over. Something hungry. Something patient. Something that had been waiting for decades beneath the cheerful veneer of Whispering Pines Estates. 7 days remained on Lily's countdown. Sarah found Dr. Voss's final journal entry dated April 17, 1971, the day before the hospital officially closed. "I have made contact," the entry read. "It speaks to me through the dying. It shows me their final moments before they occur. It demands sustenance, a continuous flow of souls to maintain its presence in our world. I have given it everything, my patience, my staff, my own sanity. And in return, it has shown me eternity." The entity that Dr. Voss had summoned was still here. Still feeding. Still using the Nextdoor app as its modern method of selection, adapting to the digital age just as it had once adapted to the asylum's paper records. The app was not a glitch or a haunting. It was a harvesting tool, a way for the thing beneath Whispering Pines to track its prey and schedule its meals. Sarah understood now why the neighbors participated in the system. They traded new arrivals for extended time. Each sacrifice bought them weeks or months or years. They had made a devil's bargain with something that predated human civilization, and they were too afraid to break the cycle. 5 days remained on Lily's countdown. Sarah made her decision in the small hours of the morning while Lily slept peacefully in her room. She would not run, because the entity would follow. She would not bargain, because she had nothing to offer that it wanted. She would fight. The journals of Dr. Voss contained more than just history. They contained instructions. The doctor had eventually realized what he had unleashed and had desperately searched for a way to undo his work. He had found one answer, though he had lacked the courage to implement it. The entity fed on souls delivered willingly by the living. If the chain of complicity was broken, if someone refused to participate in the system, the entity would starve. But breaking the chain required sacrifice. Real sacrifice. Not the passive acceptance of neighbors pushing newcomers toward death. The chain could only be broken by someone offering themselves willingly in place of another. 3 days remained on Lily's countdown. Sarah told Lily she loved her. She held her daughter close and breathed in the scent of her hair and memorized every detail of her face. Lily did not understand why her mother was crying. She did not understand why Sarah kept saying goodbye. But she returned the embrace, and for one perfect moment, everything was right with the world. That night, Sarah opened the Nextdoor app one final time. She navigated to her own profile and typed a message into the void. Take me instead. I offer myself willingly. In exchange, you release my daughter and leave this neighborhood forever. The response came instantly. Accepted. Sarah watched as Lily's countdown disappeared from the screen. She watched as her own countdown appeared in its place. 0 days. The pain was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. It felt like being unmade, like every cell in her body was being unraveled and consumed simultaneously. She collapsed to the floor of her living room, and in her final moments, she saw them. The thousands of patients who had died in the hospital. The hundreds of neighbors who had been sacrificed over the decades. They surrounded her with hollow eyes and grateful expressions, and she understood that her sacrifice had done more than save Lily. The entity had grown arrogant. It had accepted a bargain without reading the fine print. Sarah had not just offered herself. She had offered herself willingly, something that had never happened before in the history of Whispering Pines. And willing sacrifice, true willing sacrifice, was poison to something that fed on stolen souls. Sarah Morrison died on the floor of 247, Sycamore Lane. But she died smiling, because she could feel the entity dying with her. Could feel it screaming in rage as the bridge between worlds collapsed. Could feel the souls of the damned finally finding their release. Lily found her mother the next morning. The grief would take years to process. The trauma would never fully heal. But Lily Morrison was alive, and she would remain alive, because her mother had loved her enough to walk into darkness. The Nextdoor app stopped working in Whispering Pines Estates that day. The neighbors found their profiles empty, their countdowns erased. Some moved away immediately, unable to face the guilt of what they had participated in. Others stayed, too attached to their homes to leave, telling themselves that they had been victims rather than accomplices. The neighborhood looks normal now. The lawns are still perfectly manicured. The houses still stand like silent sentinels. The porch lights still flicker against the desert night. But if you look closely, if you know where to look, you can see Sarah Morrison's grave beneath the old oak tree in the backyard of 247, Sycamore Lane. And if you download the Nextdoor app while standing in Whispering Pines Estates, just for a moment, you might see a message appear on your screen. She saved you. Do not waste it. Some places are hungry. Some places remember. And some mothers will burn the world to ash before they let anything hurt their children. Sarah Morrison proved that love is the one force that even ancient evil cannot withstand. The question is, if you were in her position, would you have the courage to do the same? Think about that tonight when you check your own apps, your own notifications, your own innocent little tools that connect you to your neighbors. Think about what might be watching from the other side of the screen. Think about what price you would pay for the people you love. And if you found this story as unsettling as I hope you did, take a moment to join our community of those who dare to peer into the darkness. Leave a comment below sharing your own experiences with strange apps or unsettling neighborhoods. Strike that like button if Sarah's sacrifice moved you. Share this story with someone who needs to understand that some horrors wear the mask of suburban normalcy. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel so you never miss a journey into the shadows that lurk just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. Until next time, Keep your eyes open, your loved ones close, and remember that the most dangerous monsters are the ones that hide in plain sight.